Welcome to Algebra 1, Unit 7, Lesson 3 Practice Problems. Consider the equation x squared equals 9. Number 1. Show that 3, negative 3, square root of 9, and negative square root of 9 are each a solution to the equation. So for number 1, anytime we say x squared, we're saying whatever value we substitute for x will be multiplied by itself. So if we substitute in 3, then 3 plus 3 equals 9. So that makes it a solution. If we substitute in negative 3, then we have negative 3 times negative 3. Negative times a negative is a positive, and 3 times 3 is 9. So again, our answer is 9, and negative 3 is a solution. Third, we have square root of 9 times square root of 9. If I multiply the square root of 9 times the square root of 9, then my solution is 9, and that is what we're looking for. So square root of 9 is also a solution. And finally, we're going to have negative square root of 9 times negative square root of 9. Again, a negative times a negative is a positive, and the square root of 9 times the square root of 9 is 9. Since they all equal 9 when you multiply them by themselves, they are a solution to the equation x squared equals 9. Number 2. Show that 9 and square root of 3 are each not a solution to the equation. So we would do the same thing. We're going to have 9 times 9, which equals 81. Since that is not 9, it is not a solution to the equation. And the other example is square root of 3. If we multiply square root of 3 times square root of 3, then our answer is 3. Since that answer is not 9, it is not a solution to the equation. If you have any questions about how I solved this practice problem, please use class time to ask for further clarification. Next question. Solve the quantity of x minus 1 squared equals 16. Explain or show your reasoning. So if we have x minus 1 squared equals 16, the first thing we want to do is take the square root of each side. Anytime I take the square root of something squared, then what I have left is just what was inside. So now I have x minus 1. And the square root of 16 is plus or minus 4, because positive 4 times positive 4 is 16, but negative 4 times negative 4 is also 16. Next, we're going to want to add 1 to both sides. So, either we have x equals positive 4 plus 1, which equals 5, or we have x equals negative 4 plus 1, which equals negative 3. So the solutions are both 5 and negative 3. Next question. Here is one way to solve the equation. 5 over 9 times y squared equals 5. Explain what is done in each step. So first we have the original equation. And to go from the original equation to the new equation of 5y squared equals 45, they have multiplied both sides by 9. This has allowed the 9's to cancel out and the 5 to become 45. Next, to get to step 2, they have divided both sides by 5. This has eliminated it from the left, and it has made the right side 9. And finally, to go from step 2 to step 3, they have taken the square root of both sides. The square root of y squared is y, and the square root of 9 is both positive 3 and negative 3. It will now be important going forward for you to remember that when you take the square root, you are going to get both a positive answer and a negative answer. If you have any questions about how I solved this practice problem, please use class time to ask for further clarification. In our last question on lesson 3, Diego and Jada are working together to solve the quadratic equation x minus 2 squared equals 100. Diego solves the equation by dividing each side of the equation by 2 and then adding 2 to each side. He writes x minus 2 equals 50 and then x equals 52. Jada asks Diego why he divides each side by 2, and he says, I want to find a number that equals 100 when multiplied by itself. That number is half of 100. Number 1, what mistake is Diego making? So the problem is that Diego divided by 2 instead of taking the square root. The opposite of squaring on the left is not dividing by 2. The opposite of squaring is taking the square root. So number 1, Diego divided by 2 instead of taking the square root. Number 2. If you were Jada, what could you say to Diego to help him realize his mistake? I would ask him what the opposite of squaring was. Or ask Diego if the opposite of multiplying a number by itself is dividing by 2. Either way of phrasing it like this should help Diego realize his mistake. If you have any questions about anything from the Lesson 3 practice problems, please use class time to ask for further clarification so that you are better prepared as we move on to Lesson 4.